On an October night in 2023, inside the monitoring room of a small telecommunications company in the eastern United States, a technician noticed an unusual signal flicker across the tracking screen. It came from a phone, but not just any phone. This one had been turned off for 4 years. The coordinates pointed deep into a national forest, a place with no signal towers, no service, and no roads leading in. Nearby, on the old government maps, there was a note, a decommissioned Cold War bunker, sealed off since the 1970s and long erased from official records. The phone belonged to Ethan Cole, a 4-year-old travel photographer known for his fascination with forgotten places. He had wandered across the world from abandoned villages in Alaska to underground tunnels in Poland, capturing the quiet beauty of decay and time. In October of 2019, Ethan told his friends he wanted to take one last trip before winter, heading into the vast forest where that Cold War bunker once stood. He packed his camera, his tent, and an old phone he used for satellite tracking. After that, no one ever heard from him again. His car was later found near the forest's edge, all of his belongings still inside except for his phone. And now, after 4 long years of silence, the signal had come back. In the dim light of the control room, the technician stared at the screen as a faint set of coordinates blinked. Below them, a line of text appeared, cold, mechanical, and impossible. Signal source: active Cold War site B-17. Before the headlines, before the mystery began, Ethan Cole was simply a man chasing light. He was 34, living alone in a modest apartment on the edge of Portland, Oregon, a space filled with film reels, half-developed photos, and the quiet hum of an old projector that he refused to replace. Friends described him as calm, observant, and strangely at peace in silence. He preferred the company of landscapes to people, and believed that every abandoned place still whispered the stories of those who once lived there. Photography, for Ethan, wasn't about art. It was about memory, about preserving what the world had already chosen to forget. He made a living selling prints to travel magazines and small exhibitions. But his passion was personal projects documenting Cold War ruins, decommissioned bunkers, and forgotten border outposts scattered across the world. "Every structure has a heartbeat," he once said in an interview. "You just have to stand still long enough to hear it." By the fall of 2019, Ethan had grown restless. His last trip had taken him to northern Canada, where he spent weeks photographing an old radar station buried under snow. When he returned, friends noticed something different. He spoke less, slept little, and kept poring over old government maps. He said he was trying to locate something that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. That October, he told his parents he wanted to spend a few days in a national forest in Georgia. The region, he explained, once held a network of underground shelters built during the Cold War, most of them sealed, unrecorded, and officially erased from public archives. He wanted to capture what remained before time buried it completely. On the morning of October 12th, he packed his camera gear, food supplies, a tent, and his old Nokia phone, modified, with a GPS attachment. The car's dashboard camera showed him driving out of town just after dawn. He looked tired but focused occasionally, glancing at the printed maps on the passenger seat. Ethan checked into a small roadside motel that night, a few miles from the forest boundary. The owner remembered him as polite but distracted, asking only for 2 things: extra batteries and a paper map of the area. The next day, he parked near an old logging trail that led deep into the woods. It was the last confirmed sighting of him. When he failed to return, local rangers launched a search. They found his car still locked, with his laptop, wallet, and clothes untouched. Inside the trunk, they discovered something unusual: a handwritten note on the back of a film box that simply read, "If I don't make it back by Monday, the entrance isn't where it used to be." There were footprints leading away from the car, vanishing after a few hundred yards. The dogs lost his scent near a narrow ravine that curved toward the restricted zone, the one marked decades ago as Cold War Site B-17. The investigation went on for weeks. Helicopters scanned miles of dense forest. Volunteers combed through valleys and streams. Nothing surfaced. No equipment, no traces of a struggle, not even a broken camera lens. By winter, the case was quietly suspended. The forest grew cold again, swallowing the trails he once walked. To those who knew him, Ethan became another name in a long list of explorers who vanished chasing forgotten places. But for his family, there was one detail they could never let go of: the phone that had disappeared with him, the same one that would light up again 4 years later from beneath the ground, in a place no one was supposed to find. For weeks, the forest echoed with voices calling Ethan's name. Volunteers, park rangers, and local deputies combed through every visible trail, marking trees with orange ribbons and scanning the ground for any trace of a campsite. The air was thick with the scent of pine and decay, the kind of stillness that seemed to swallow sound itself. Ethan's disappearance quickly became the region's most unsettling mystery in years. News crews arrived, filming long shots of search teams trudging through mist and mud. Some viewers described the place as beautiful, others called it cursed. But those who walked beneath its canopy said the deeper you went, the quieter it became. Unnaturally quiet, as though something deep in the earth was listening. The first search area extended 5 miles from where his car had been left. They found signs of an old campfire, several footprints half washed away by rain, and a torn piece of fabric that might have come from his backpack. But beyond that, nothing. The trail simply ended where the trees thickened, and the ground dipped toward a marshy valley. Specialists from Atlanta joined in with drones and thermal imaging. The devices picked up nothing but cold soil and animal heat. One drone lost signal over a section of land marked decades ago as restricted, the former Cold War installation known as Site B-17. When the operator tried to redirect it, the feed glitched and froze on a single frame, a faint outline of a metallic door buried under layers of moss. A week later, the rains came. Heavy storms washed away what little evidence remained. Creeks overflowed, and paths turned to rivers of mud. Some volunteers got lost themselves, wandering for hours before finding the trail again. By the end of the second week, the search was scaled back to a smaller team of professionals. Ethan's parents arrived from Oregon. They stood near the ranger's post, watching as the last groups returned empty-handed each night. His mother clutched a photograph of him holding a camera, smiling against a backdrop of mountains. "He's out there somewhere," she told a reporter quietly. "He wouldn't give up this easily." But by the 21st day, hope began to thin. Rangers had mapped more than 40 square miles, and every lead circled back to the same dead end, the unmarked zone by the old bunker site. They requested clearance to search inside, but federal archives returned a confusing message: area not recognized under current jurisdiction. No one could explain it. The supposed entrance shown on Cold War maps no longer existed. Some believed it had collapsed decades ago. Others thought the site had been sealed intentionally. Yet several rangers reported hearing something strange near that section, a rhythmic clang, faint but metallic, echoing from underground. By December, the official investigation was suspended. The reports described Ethan's case as lost due to environmental exposure, but among those who had searched, few accepted that conclusion. Too much didn't add up: no trace of equipment, no camera, no remains. In the months that followed, the forest grew eerily undisturbed again. Moss covered the footprints, and vines crept over the markers left by rescuers. Only one ranger, a man named Carter, continued returning to the area on his own time. He later admitted that every time he passed near the old coordinates, his radio would hiss with static for several seconds, as if something unseen was transmitting just below his feet. By spring, Ethan's name faded from the headlines. His photographs, once admired for their haunting serenity, began circulating online. Again, each frame a reminder of silence, decay, and solitude. And beneath those images, comments kept appearing, all asking the same question. Did he find what he was looking for? No one knew. All they had left was an empty car, a trail that ended in shadow, and a phone that, for reasons no one could explain, would one day awaken in the dark. 4 years passed. The forest had returned to silence. By then, Ethan Cole's name had faded into local folklore, a tale told by rangers to warn campers about wandering too far into forgotten trails. His parents had moved back to Oregon, still leaving a single light on their porch every night, just in case. Then, in October 2023, something stirred. At 11:47 p.m., inside a quiet data center in Virginia, a technician monitoring satellite signals noticed a faint ping appear on his screen. It was weak, fragmented like an echo bouncing off an abandoned frequency. At first, he assumed it was a glitch. But as the coordinates stabilized, the system identified the source, a mobile device registered to Ethan Cole. The phone, long listed as inactive, had suddenly powered on. The location was impossible. The signal came from beneath the surface, in the same national forest where Ethan had vanished precisely near the coordinates once marked as Cold War Site B-17. The data log confirmed it wasn't a delayed transmission. The signal was live. Authorities were alerted within the hour. A team from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was dispatched before dawn, joined by park officials and a few federal agents. They brought equipment capable of tracking underground signals, unsure of what they were heading into. By sunrise, the convoy reached the forest boundary. Mist hung low, and the air carried the metallic scent of rain-soaked soil. The GPS led them off the main trail, through dense vegetation and uneven ground, until they reached a moss-covered mound that looked like part of the hillside. But it wasn't. Hidden beneath layers of vines was a steel door, half buried in dirt. Rust covered the hinges, yet someone, or something, had recently disturbed the soil around it. The team pried it open with crowbars. The hinges screamed after decades of stillness. A rush of stale, icy air poured out, carrying the faint smell of oil and dust. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow concrete stairwell leading down. As they descended, the air grew heavier. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping condensation. Some walls were marked with faded military symbols and warning labels in English and Cyrillic. The bunker was real, a relic of the Cold War, built and then erased from public record. In the main chamber, the walls widened into what once might have been a control room. Rusted equipment sat motionless, screens shattered, cables snaking across the floor. But on a metal table near the center, something glowed faintly in the dark. A phone, blackened by time, its screen flickering. The device was still logged into Ethan's account. The battery indicator showed 1%, even though the power source had been dead for years. A recent file was visible on the screen, a video, timestamped the same day Ethan disappeared. One of the investigators, a man named Carter, the same ranger who had never stopped thinking about the case, reached out and pressed play. The room filled with static, followed by the faint sound of breathing. Then, Ethan's voice broke through, trembling, urgent. If anyone finds this, please listen carefully. The footage showed him inside the same bunker, sitting in the corner with his camera bag beside him. The light from his phone illuminated cold walls behind him. He looked thinner, exhausted, but still alive. "There's something down here," he whispered. "I thought it was just machinery. But it moves. It's been following the sound of my steps." The video cut off abruptly. For a long moment, no one in the chamber spoke. The silence pressed in from every direction, thick, unnatural, like the bunker itself was holding its breath. Then, the technician monitoring the signal looked down at his tablet and muttered, barely audible. The phone just turned off again. The room remained frozen in silence after the screen went black. The investigators stood motionless, the hum of their portable lights, the only sound breaking the stillness. Then Carter replayed the file, frame by frame, watching closely as the final seconds flickered before fading. The footage began with static, the kind that ripples across a screen when light struggles to exist. Ethan's voice was faint at first, almost drowned beneath the steady drip of water somewhere nearby. His face came into view, illuminated only by the bluish glow of his phone. His expression was gaunt, his eyes darting towards something just beyond the frame. "I've been down here for I don't know how long," he said softly.
My GPS stopped working 2 days ago. I thought I could find another exit, but every tunnel looks the same.
He paused, breathing hard. The camera shifted, showing a dim corridor lined with rusted pipes and broken warning signs. Faded stencils read, "Property of U.S. Defense," in peeling paint. Behind him, a soft metallic creak echoed, like a hinge moving somewhere deep in the dark. "I've heard that sound every night," Ethan continued, his voice trembling. "At first I thought it was the wind pushing through the vents, but it's not. It's closer now. I hear footsteps sometimes. Slow, careful, like someone doesn't want me to know they're there." The camera jerked slightly, catching a flash of motion in the far corner, a shadow slipping past the light. Ethan spun around, his breath quickening, the beam trembling in his hand. The lens caught only concrete walls and dripping water. He whispered again, almost to himself. "There's no record of this place. The maps were wrong. It's not one bunker, it's a network. I keep finding locked doors with symbols I can't read. Some are warm to the touch, like something still running behind them." He reached toward one of those doors, pressing his palm against the metal. A faint hum vibrated through the audio. The phone's microphone distorted slightly, the signal warping, as if the air itself interfered. Ethan recoiled, staring at his hand, his voice barely audible. "Someone sealed this place for a reason." A few seconds of silence followed, the kind that seemed to pull everything inward. Then, a faint tapping sound began, rhythmic and deliberate. Ethan lifted the camera toward the far end of the hall, whispering, "That's not me." The light flickered. For a fraction of a second, something moved at the edge of the corridor, a silhouette, human in shape but too still, standing in the dark. Then the feed distorted, the first screen filling with vertical lines and white noise. When the image cleared, Ethan was running, panting, the beam bouncing wildly. The camera caught glimpses of what looked like living quarters, old bunks, rotted furniture, papers scattered across the floor. A single photograph fluttered in the draft, showing a group of uniformed men in front of the same bunker door, dated 1962. Scrawled across the back was a single phrase, "They never left." Ethan's breathing grew ragged. "I think it knows where I am now," he said, voice cracking. "I shouldn't have opened that room. The air feels different, heavy." A low metallic groan rolled through the bunker, as if a massive door had shifted somewhere in the distance. Dust rained from the ceiling. The phone shook in his grip, then silence again. He crouched against the wall, whispering what sounded like a prayer. The light dimmed as the battery icon blinked red. Then, suddenly, his eyes widened. He turned the camera toward the far end of the corridor. The frame froze on what appeared to be a figure standing upright, motionless, facing the wall. The final seconds came fast, Ethan whispering, "I hear it breathing," before the video cut to black. When the investigators finished watching, the air in the bunker felt colder. No one spoke. The file ended exactly where it had before. No timestamp beyond that last frame. No audio trace to analyze. The technicians tried copying the data, but every attempt failed. The file corrupted instantly after playback, leaving behind only a single still image, the last frame. The blurred outline of Ethan, pointing his light into the darkness. And just above him, faint but visible, a reflection shimmered on the metal wall. It wasn't his. Carter stared at that frozen image long after the others had left, the echo of Ethan's final words still trapped in his head. Outside, the wind hissed through the trees, and for a fleeting second, it almost sounded like someone whispering back. When police released the final video from Ethan Cole's phone, both investigators and the online community were drawn into a spiral of speculation. No one could explain how a device that had lost signal for 4 years could suddenly power on inside a Cold War-era bunker, a place without electricity, and no signs of recent human presence. The first and most widely accepted theory suggests that Ethan became trapped and died near the bunker, but before his death, he managed to record his final moments. Some believe that, in a state of panic, he stumbled upon the old shelter, perhaps seeking cover from a storm or wild animals and accidentally locked himself inside. When the battery died, the phone shut off, and 4 years later, due to changes in humidity, the lithium battery might have somehow reactivated, briefly turning the phone back on. However, experts quickly dismissed this explanation, noting that it's nearly impossible for a phone battery to restart after so long and still retain video data. Another possibility points to human interference. Some argue that someone found Ethan's remains, took the phone, and brought it into the bunker, perhaps a place they used for hiding or storage. The phone's activation could have been intentional, not accidental. But if that were true, why leave the phone behind? And why did the video only capture an empty room, rather than someone's movements or hands holding the device? These questions made the theory plausible, but incomplete logical, yet unsatisfying. A more unsettling theory involves a secret organization that may have used the area during the Cold War. Some believe those bunkers once housed surveillance equipment, and perhaps someone has maintained them in secret ever since. If Ethan accidentally discovered something he wasn't supposed to, he might have been silenced, and the phone's activation could have been a signal or a warning. Though this explanation sounds like something out of a movie, it quickly gained traction online, sparking countless discussions on forums and YouTube. Then there's the supernatural explanation. Some claim the video and sudden phone activation were messages from Ethan himself, an attempt by his spirit to guide searchers to his resting place. Those who believe in such phenomena argue that human energy can imprint on electronic devices, and the cold, isolated bunker only amplifies that eerie possibility. Despite endless speculation, no one truly knows what happened. Authorities have kept many details confidential, including the original video and the exact location of the bunker. For Ethan's family, after years of waiting, their only wish is to recover his body and bring him home. But with every unanswered question, Ethan Cole's story grows more mysterious, as if the forest and its forgotten bunkers are still guarding a secret the world is not yet meant to uncover. In November 2023, a small independent search team, made up of Ethan's old friends, returned to the forest. They carried satellite maps, metal detectors, and a faint hope that something might still be found. After days of digging near the bunker site, they uncovered a backpack buried deep beneath damp soil, about 20 meters from the entrance. Inside was Ethan's camera, rusted and weathered, but the memory card was still intact. When they opened it, they found hundreds of photographs capturing the forest's breathtaking beauty. Sunlight breaking through the canopy, a quiet stream mirroring the sky, animal tracks fading into mud. But in the final images, one detail sent chills down everyone's spine: a faint figure standing in the distance, behind Ethan, reflected in the lens. No one knows who it was, or why Ethan never seemed to notice. The camera and the video from his phone became the final pieces of a story that would never be complete. Though police continued to investigate, there was no proof that Ethan had been murdered, nor any sign that he was still alive. Only one truth remained. He had vanished entirely within that wilderness, leaving behind a trail of questions that may never be answered. Some say that deep within nature, there are still places untouched by time, places humans were never meant to go. Perhaps Ethan, with his free spirit and love for discovery, had simply crossed that unseen boundary where the line between reality and the unknown begins to blur. If he could leave one last message, perhaps it would be this: don't go alone, and don't forget to come back, because in those silent mountains and endless woods, the most terrifying thing isn't the darkness, it's the silence that lingers long after. The kind of silence that carries a voice, faint but enduring, as if Ethan Cole is still out there somewhere calling softly through the wind, waiting to be heard. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it so more people can uncover the mysteries still hidden in the world's forgotten places.